How not to get a woman to like you. I apologize for this long post, but this is the weirdest thing that's ever happened to me in my entire life. It was Anzac Day long weekend a couple years ago. I am in Australia. My housemate and I decided to take advantage of the drink specials at the local bars and pop out for a lunchtime pint or two. We are sitting and chatting, and soon she catches the eye of a guy in the bar. He approaches with a mate of his and starts to hit on my friend. She's very receptive, so while they make googly eyes at each other, the friend and I establish that we are not interested in each other, but get to chatting like good wings should. There may not be any attraction, but he's entertaining, and our conversation is lively. Everyone finishes their drinks, and the wingman gets up to buy a round. The happy couple are enamored with each other, so I look around the bar for anything interesting. Being Anzac Day long weekend, the place is packed to the brim with servicemen and women in uniform, and rowdy randoms taking advantage of being able to drink at lunchtime on a Monday. I spot a guy in uniform standing awkwardly in the corner, staring at me, but as soon as I spot him, he quickly looks away. A weird-looking guy, probably in his 40s, who just seemed totally out of place. His uniform was odd, as if it wasn't the real thing, but he'd picked it up from a costume shop. Navy blue with brass buttons and gold tassels on the shoulders, a chest full of medals. Something about him just gave me the creeps, and that very rarely happens. Wingman returns with our pint, so I'm entertained again. But a few times my eyes sweep back to the creepy guy. Each time he quickly looks away. After about 15 minutes, creepy guy finally gets up the courage to approach me. He walks up while I'm mid-conversation with the wingman and asks my name. Now, to be clear, I have no issues with being approached in a respectable manner in bars. I'm not admonishing the guy for that, but to approach a woman in a bar while she's engaged in an active conversation with another man is a touch odd. We both pause and look at the guy. I tell him my name with a raised eyebrow. Without telling me his, he asks if I would like a drink. Trying not to be rude because I understand how nerve-wracking it can be to approach people. I decline and gesture to my half-finished pint. The guy is obviously nervous and should be harmless, but he's setting off my internal alarms. He asks if the wingman and I are together. I have a policy not to lie about these things because I don't think women should need to give an excuse to a guy to turn him down. So I say no, but he reiterate that I don't want him to buy me a drink and gently suggests he tries luck elsewhere. He turns around and walks away. Wingman's man makes a low whistle and says something like, "Wow, what a weirdo." Conversation continues, and creepy guy is back in his corner, still staring. After about 10 minutes, he approaches again when my glass is empty, asking if he can buy me a drink now. I tell him flat out again I am not interested. He returns to his corner and keeps staring while Wingman and I exchange what the fucks. Some more time passes, and he approaches again, this time holding what looks like a whiskey and coke and says, "I bought you a drink. I hope you like it." At this point, I've lost my patience and tell him in a slightly harsher and perhaps drunker tone that I do not want his drink, and no is not up for negotiation, and he's creeping me out. This time, the creepy guy doesn't just skulk away, his face contorts into pure rage, like clenched bare teeth and red-faced rage, but he says nothing. I must have raised my voice because a bouncer quickly comes over, puts his hand on the guy's shoulder and guides him away. I hear him muttering something like "bitch," "whore," under his breath as he's led away. Although the bouncer has taken him to the other side of the pub, I can tell by the body language he's asking the guy to leave. He downs the drink he bought for me in one gulp and walks out. After maybe another half an hour, it's time for us to go. Things went well for my friend, and she exchanged numbers with the guy she was chatting to. Our place is a short free bus ride away in the next suburb, so we amble off to the stop. Just around the corner from the pub, we plonk down on the bench and I look over her shoulder. There he is. Creepy guy leaning against the wall, staring right at me. He doesn't look away this time. He holds eye contact, and he starts to look angry again. The bus pulls up, and we get on as quick as we can and run to the back. Unfortunately, he has the same idea, but he just sits at the middle of the bus, turn around in his seat, just openly staring and gradually looking angrier. It's just us on the bus. My housemate and I are freaked out. We tried to look away and ignore him, so as not to provoke him. We decided to get out the bus a couple stops early to avoid this guy knowing where we live. Unfortunately, he doesn't follow us, but that wasn't the last I see of the creepy military man. The stop we got off at was out the front of a couple corner restaurants, a bottle shop and a corner store, the kind of place that is hub for locals and always busy. On random days, I would walk down there to get some takeaway or a bottle of milk and see him sitting at the stop, still in that weird uniform, never getting on the bus if it went past. Before all this happened, I'd never seen this guy in the area before. He was definitely no local. My housemates and friends would tell me whether my friend was at the stop again, or if I was free to go get myself some delicious takeaway. This happened for months. My friends also spotted him several more times in the pub where we met, usually standing in the same corner and not speaking to anyone. I never went back to that pub. After a while, I started dating someone, a pretty cool guy who was a busker around that area. My housemate came home and told me that the coast was clear if I want to go pop down to the corner and get something, so the Beau and I head off to pick up a bottle of wine and some snacks. When we get there, the guy was sitting at the stop. We spot him, he spots us, and we freeze. His eyes darted backwards and forwards between my boyfriend and I. We were holding hands, so it was pretty obvious we were together. He stands up and says, "Just like the others," turns around and walks off down the hill. I never saw him after that, but my boyfriend did for a couple weeks while he was out busking. Creepy guy would usually just stare at him with an angry expression and walk past. But sometimes he would drop things in the guitar case in which he had to collect money. Random things like bottle caps and used bus tickets. Once a piece of paper with the word shit written on it. The last time you ever saw him, he just spat in it. Then nobody I know ever saw him again. Since this happened, I moved to another city, so I don't fear the creepy dude anymore. But being approached by a man in uniform still puts me on edge. Father Kane. This story is from quite a long time ago, in the 1980s. At the time, I was in middle school in a suburb in Pennsylvania. One weekend, a long weekend, I had planned to sleep over at a friend's house. This would normally involve riding bikes around the neighborhood and playing Nintendo until very late. But this time when I arrived, my friend Brian told me he had to help out at his church. He said I could join and help too if I wanted, and having nothing else to do, I agreed. His family was very religious, and Brian was especially close to the pastor. Brian's mom dropped us off at the church, and we spent time moving chairs around and helping to pack things away. Brian introduced me to Father Kane, who seemed friendly and asked me a lot of questions about my family and if I went to church. I told him that we didn't, and I remember being worried that he would react badly, but he seemed fine with it. Sometime later, it was getting near dinner time, and Father Kane asked if we wanted to eat with him and then watch a movie. Brian seemed interested, and I thought, why not? So he called his mom and postponed the time she would pick us up. We went to Father Kane's apartment, which was attached to part of the church, and ate some dinner together. He asked me if I wanted a drink, and when we went to his fridge, he handed me a beer. My parents had allowed me to try alcohol if I wanted to, and I always thought it was disgusting, so I asked Father Kane for something else and he gave me a soda. Then after dinner, we watched the movie, The Shining. Later, Brian's mom picked us up, and we went back to his house. I remember talking with Brian at the time and agreeing with him that Father Kane seemed very cool. A couple months went by, and one morning, there was a big drama at school. Someone asked me if I had heard the news and why Brian was out of school that week. Father Kane had been charged with molesting altar boys and had fled. It turned out that Father Kane had groomed boys over many years and had been molesting them in that church apartment, giving them alcohol and cigarettes, and eventually sharing them with 2 other priests. Unusually for the time, all were eventually charged and went to jail, though it took heavy action by the parents of the victims to make it happen, and many years until they were sentenced. 30 years later, and this is definitely one of the creepiest encounters I've had with someone. In hindsight, what's maybe the most worrying is how at that age, there weren't any alarm bells ringing, despite what seemed to be now obvious red flags. I just thought he was a nice chilled out guy. We had been taught about stranger danger as kids, but he wasn't a stranger and he was in a position of authority, so I didn't think to question his motives. It was a lesson to me how easily people with authority and respect in a community can get away with terrible things. Had to share this, it's been too long. I am a 26-year-old female living in Scotland. I have a disturbing and downright odd story that I've never considered sharing until now. It involves myself, my cousin, a few friends, and an absolute creep that vanished and got away with everything. My cousin and I are the same age, and we were 14 at the beginning of this near 3-year incident. My cousin had gotten a new household computer and had installed and used MSN, as that was the major instant messenger back then. She started adding individuals from everywhere onto her contact list. One boy had stuck out. He claimed his name was Mark Halligan, age 15, from Blackpool, England. They started talking every day, exchanging innocent pictures and becoming very close friends. He quickly admitted he was older, 17, and apologized for lying. My cousin gave him the benefit of the doubt and continued the friendship. Things got weirder here. He knew it was her birthday soon and wanted to send her a gift. She told me about this and we thought it would be cool. I wanted to see what he would send, so she agreed, but waited a while before sending her address. He started by sending phone credit codes so they could text when the computer was in use. She then gave him the address and sent her a lot of stuff. DVD player, huge teddy, DVDs, CDs, clothes, sweets, and various other things that she had to explain away to her parents as being a prize from a school competition. This went on for some time. While he still maintained he was 17 years old and added on that he made money from an under 21-year-old's football placement. Things escalated when he wanted to come up to meet her. She told me she was going to meet him and she was taking her friend with her to be safe, and she was very excited. While making arrangements, he planned to take the train to Scotland, but of course, the day before he was due to come up, he admitted he was 21, had a car and a job. She was 15 and thought it was appealing, and still went through with it. I phoned her that night and she didn't tell me much, just that she didn't want to talk to him again and didn't divulge any more information. A few days later, I received a contact request on MSN from Mark. I accepted, and he told me how him and my cousin had stopped talking, and he wanted to know why. I didn't have answers other than that she didn't want to speak to him again. We started to become very good friends. He was starting to act the same with me, sending phone credit so that I could text him every day. I found him really funny and a nice person. I told my cousin that we had been talking, and she asked me not to speak to him again and didn't tell me why, no explanation at all. That night I told Mark what my cousin had asked me to do, and he asked to call me to sort things out. I agreed, and later that night he called. The voice on the other end of the phone was very odd, high-pitched and feminine sounding. We spoke and he explained he had an accident and tore his vocal cords as a child. I felt bad and kept talking to him, assuming that was why I was no longer to speak to him, and maybe that's what scared my cousin. Soon after, I got a call from my cousin who told me that a large package had been sent to her house addressed to me. I went round her house to get it. We both opened it. It was banned t-shirts, CDs, new Converse, books, an iPod, and money. I couldn't believe it. I wasn't sending it back though. At that age, getting all that stuff for free was amazing. I got home and called Mark to thank him for the gifts. He was happy and that I was happy, and we kept talking for a few hours. Lo and behold, he asked to come up to visit. I agreed, and I told my best friend, and she was very wary and insisted on going with me. The day he was meeting us, we had agreed on a location about 20 minutes away from my house. We waited outside of a shop for him to arrive, already full of nerves and excitement. He was 10 minutes late, which magnified the feelings. What approached us at a very fast pace and came to an abrupt stop was a blue VW Golf. He sat for 5 minutes before getting out of the car. We stood and knew something was wrong immediately. What got out of that car was terrifying to two 15-year-olds expecting someone who we thought was 21 years old, handsome, tall, and a warm person. This actually happened. Nothing is exaggerated at all. He stepped out of that car, and he stood around 5 feet tall. He was in all denim. His face, honest to goodness, looked like a burn victim's face. This man was in no shape or form 21. He was easily in his 50s and 60s, which we found out at a later date was true, and he was truly intimidating. We smiled, said hello, and asked him to go on a walk. We took him towards my house. While walking to the destination, we whispered to each other and made a plan to run away from him. We exclaimed that we were going to pop into a friend's house to get a DVD to watch at my house. We decided to go to my still best childhood friend of 23 years home, which was en route to my house. Both of us in tears but hiding in our friend's house, and near collapse in the doorway. We gave him a brief account of what happened and told him we needed to get away from him. We were petrified. He told us to lock the door behind us, and we went out into the back garden to get away from this guy. Climbed the fence and ran like the effing wind between houses and back gardens to a heavily wooded area that we knew really well that led to my house. We must have stayed there for hours. We knew roughly how long it would take him to get back to his car and maybe drive around to look for us. So we had to keep away from roads and we thought if we would stay put, we would be safe, which we were. During this time, we had calls from Mark coming through, but we just let them ring out. We made a dash to my house where we called my cousin to ask her basically what the fuck. She got her dad to bring her around and we talked it out. Then now 4 of us stayed in my house all night and we didn't leave each other alone at all for at least a few days. We both got further texts and phone calls after this meetup, but we ignored them all until he stopped. We were too scared to tell anyone, so we decided to keep it a secret. Cut to about 6 months later, my friend and I were going to Blackpool for a long weekend with our parents. About 2 days into the trip, I got a text saying that he thought he saw me in Blackpool and confirmed this by describing a mint green summer top that I was wearing at the time and told me that he knew where we were staying. I told him to keep away or I'd phone the police. He apologized and agreed. The next day, I was approached by the lady that ran the bed and breakfast. She told me that I had an envelope. He had written a note that basically said not to phone the police, and he would never call me again and included $500 for my friend and I. Being stupid and not thinking, we took the money, laughing, already spending it in our heads and never said a word. We didn't hear anything from him again until about a year later. I received a picture or message of a person lying with his wrist cut, blaming my cousin and I for ruining his life. Because we didn't want to contact anymore, and neither of us loved him. I contacted her and told her about the message. I went round to her house, and we both decided to tell her dad, and he immediately contacted the police. They asked us to monitor any other contact and report it for evidence. Within hours of sending the picture, Mark had done something absolutely terrifying. He had called my cousin, and her dad insisted he listen in to the conversation. He told her he had bought her a car, and it was outside her house, and he had left the area after dropping it off, and gave her a specific description of it. He told her that there was a car key on the wheel, a blue bow on the steering wheel, and all the documents for the car were in the back of the driver's seat. My uncle phoned the police again, told them about the car, and that he went out to confirm Mark's description of the car. When the police arrived, they arranged for the car to be towed, and to trace the numbers and online profiles that he had used. The only information that we got back from the police since that day was the car was registered to a Pamela Halligan. A person he had told us in previous conversation was his sister, which was confusing because he had told us that his sister had died tragically in an IRA bombing in 1979 at the age of 10. It was horrible. To know he was watching us when we didn't know, was at my cousin's house when we didn't know. He could have been anywhere at any time, knew anything about us, and had the capability to go to extremes with lies and actions. I've researched his name a million times, different spellings, and never found anything. We still get chills talking about him, and have often not been able to finish a full conversation about him due to the horrible realization of what he had done. I thought it was my room. To start off, I'm a 16-year-old female, okay? I was visiting my mom's apartment for the weekend with my sister. We go there every weekend or every other weekend to see her. We arrive at about 10 in the morning and brought in our pillows and movies or whatever from my grandma's car. We get inside and chill there for a couple hours watching TV before our sister says she's hungry. My mom said, "Okay, what do you want? Pizza?" I said I was okay with having pizza, and my mom said she would have to go to run to Kroger's, which is less than a mile away. She said she would go get some movies from Redbox. My sister then asked if she could go with my mom to Kroger's. My mom said she could and asked if I would be okay in the apartment by myself. I said I would, because I knew I would. "I'll be gone 20 minutes tops," my mom said. She didn't like leaving me alone, but she thought it would be okay as she told me later. Now my mom's apartment is in a kind of crappy place, where sex trafficking people have been spotted, drug dealers and thieves and stuff. But I was on the 3rd floor of one of the many surrounding apartment buildings with tons of neighbors. I would be fine. "Okay, lock the door, and you know not to open it unless it's me." They soon left after, and I was sitting on the couch, on my phone with Jerry Springer playing in the background. It was about 10 minutes after they left when I heard the doorknob jiggle. I looked up, not feeling scared right away, but also feeling a little wary. I should mention that I carry a pocket knife everywhere with me, and the blade is about 3 to 4 inches long. I was sitting on the coffee table in front of me when I got up to go to the door. I'm only 5'3", and I knew not to open the door, so I grabbed a chair and stood on it and looked through the peephole. That's when I shit my pants. On the other side was some Mexican guy just standing there, trying to open the door. Of course, being how I am, I tried to laugh myself out of being afraid because I had no reason to think he was gonna do something to me. Maybe he just had the wrong room, right? I'd never seen him before, and I don't know everyone in the building personally, but I'd seen them all at least once, and he wasn't one of them. "Hey man, I think you got the wrong room." He froze, his eyes glued to the door handle and then at the people. He probably could tell exactly where I was when I spoke. I swear we made eye contact, and the whites of his eyes were so yellow, I thought he had jaundice. Then all of a sudden, he started ramming his shoulder into the door, like full-on shoulder, ramming in like football. I jump off the chair and grab my phone and knife and run into a room with a window and lock the door. I call my mom's friend who lives in the apartment building across the street and starts crying hysterically and said, "Jess, someone's trying to break in, call the cops, bring Chris, please, get over here, just get over here." She didn't even hesitate. "Oh my god, I'm coming." Within seconds of hanging up, I call my mother. The guy is still hitting the door and he's yelling in frustration now. My mom picks up after a few rings and I tell her what I told my friend, and she was coming with Chris and she needed to get here quick. All she said was, "I'm coming." By the time I saw Chris make her way down 2 flights of stairs and cross the road with her boyfriend, my mom was flying down the road and was there within mere seconds of me calling. They all race inside and I hear everyone yelling in the hallway. I unlock the door and peek outside the apartment and see Chris holding the guy against the wall, while my mom hugs me and Jess is screaming at him. Long story shorter, the police arrived and took my statements, and the man first denied it by saying, "I thought it was my room," but then he ended up confessing he wanted to see me and talk to me because he thought I was pretty. The police officers had him in handcuffs and ran a background check on him, and what came out wasn't surprising. He had a warrant for an assault charge on a woman, have been arrested for child molestation and kidnapping. Yeah, we didn't sleep that night.